Hey guys, this is part 2 of turning this beat up old heirloom into the precious masterpiece that it originally was. Just to give you a glimpse of the first part 1 video of this, we did all the fixings, all the cleaning, all the repair, all the sanding, all the prepping, all the priming, and all the paint. And that's why this had to be split up into 2 parts, because working with antiques and heirloom pieces takes a lot of time, especially in the prep process. So go and check out that video if you haven't watched that yet. But we are going to get to the full process of stripping a top, resurfacing it, and restaining and sealing it. Also included in this video is just a tad of that 3D dimensional look that we do with dark wax. But I did a really slow process on that 2 weeks ago, so you can also check out that video right here. When I am working on a two-tone piece, I usually do the painting part first because I want to get that done, I want to get that sealed up and ready to go before we touch the top. Now, in this process, I should have used plastic, and that plastic should have gone all the way to the bottom because a drop of this stripper got onto that paint, and guess what? It wiped it clean off because Green Easy's Strip and Clean is one of the best and very effective. So make sure that you have covered your piece. The rest of it was fine. I just repainted that area. I'm using a scrubby soap pad that doesn't have soap in it anymore, and it's really cool because using a sponge you can kind of squeeze it out when you get too much in the area and spread it back out over the surface. After I've fully covered the surface with a pretty generous layer of this Green Easy's Strip and Clean, the part 1 of the product, it comes in 2 parts, then I cover it with saran wrap. I do this because it's cold and it's really dry, and I don't want it to work and then dry before I can have a chance to strip it off. The fun part is coming up. Use your putty knife and scrape it off. This process is so satisfying. I left it sitting for about an hour. You can use a larger 10-inch plaster knife like this or a smaller one. Part 2 of Green Easy's Strip and Clean is their finishing cleanser. It's amazing because whatever the stripper missed or didn't get deep enough in, you take steel wool. I'm taking 00 or 000, a pretty soft steel wool, and I'm going through with the finishing cleanser and I'm scrubbing any parts that are still sticky. It's also great at getting off all the sticky residue, and so you're not having to sand that off at the end. After you go through, I spray quite a few times on the surface and scrub it, and then I go through with a paper towel and I wipe it clean off. Once that's done, I usually let this dry overnight because you really want the surface dry before you attempt to sand it. Resurfacing old wood veneer is very tricky if you go too deep too quickly, so you want to start with the lightest grit possible that you know is going to still take down the surface. I started with a 120, I ended up going down to 80 because the 120 wasn't doing much to get a lot of this off. The 80 also wasn't ripping up through the veneer. It's a very hard veneer, it's really good, and so I used 80 and then I used a 100 to go over it, then I used 120 and then I went up to 180. When you're resurfacing something like this and it has deep gouges or scratches, once you get down to that bottom layer, those completely go away if they're not through the veneer completely. Now, getting off all the last stain spots, this was pretty stubborn. It should have come off with a Strip and Clean, but honestly, old veneer like this and varnish is just really stubborn. So we got the majority of it off. The rest is going to come off from sanding it. And again, you work up through your grits because you're resurfacing it. So you're going down and getting off all of everything with the 80, and then you're making those mountains that you just sanded a little bit smaller. Then you're going down to 120, so you're making it a little bit smoother, and then the 180 gets it all ready for stain. But basically you're taking a really rough surface that you just got all the yuck off and all the scratches out, and then you're making it really smooth, but not too smooth so that it can still take the stain. I wetted it down with mineral spirits to show the client that this was going to pull to red, and so we wanted to keep it mostly just like a light tan like it shows in the natural wood that it shows right there. And so I used weathered oak because this is going to give it a little bit of a grayish yellowish tint to take away that cherry look, so that when we put poly over it, it's not going to pull to red, but it's going to keep this natural, beautiful oak looking at the top. I have a staining sponge in my hand and I'm dipping it in after you mix the can completely, and this is by Minwax, it's called Weathered Oak. After you mix it completely, you just dip it in and you apply it on the surface. You can go in any direction you want, but you always want to finish going with the grain. The grain in this piece goes from left to right, right to left, and so after I am done getting all the parts covered, even the sides, I'm going to go back and forth to make sure that it goes with the grain. Once you've let it penetrate the wood for probably like 5 to 10 minutes, this is oil-based so it doesn't dry super quickly. I go through with these blue shop cloths, and these are amazing because I can use one single one over the entire top and it doesn't get overloaded like regular paper towels do. I basically wipe off any excess stain, make sure that it's rubbed into the surface, and let that dry. You can do a second coat, but this one just needed one coat, so we're going to let it dry completely. On the can it says for 4 hours before we put any polyurethane over the top. Oil goes with oil, and so when you're using an oil-based stain, you have to put an oil-based seal over it. So polyurethane is an oil-based seal. If you see polyacrylic, that's a water-based poly, and it's great, but it's great to go over the paint, just like we did on the painted part. Now, I have a pro tip for you today. I know a lot of you do this by hand, which is totally okay, and you can use the same mixture that I have in my gun and do it by hand in really light strokes. Now, as you can see, my plastic loved to get in my shot. Kind of wanted to be the star of the show, but I'm just going to roll with it. So in my can right there, I have mixed just Minwax's polyurethane and satin with 10% mineral spirits. I have put it through a micron strainer, 190 micron strainer, and all this is found in the description. Every single thing I use is found in the description. They're all affiliate links, so thank you so much for supporting me. But I put this through my sprayer and it sprays a really thin coat, and that mineral spirits thins it down enough so that it's not going to be super thick and goopy at all. If you paint it on, same thing. You still want to strain it and you still want to go through the process of making sure that it's thinned down enough so that you do really light coats. You do about 3 of them. And that is my pro tip for getting the ultimate smooth surface without a bunch of grit and dust and stuff that lays in the top. Moving on to the front. If you want to see how I did the drawers, you can check out my previous video. It's linked up above. But basically on the front of this, anywhere where there's dimension in the wood, which is all these little wood details on it, I'm going to go through with an artist brush and I'm going to take some dark wax, and you can heat it up if you want it to be an easier process. But basically it's like applying eyeliner or eyeshadow. You just go through and dip it in and then put it on your surface. You can't mess this up. You're going to see me do this a few times, but basically you just put it on, and then I'm going to take that same steel wool that I used to strip the top, which is the 00, and I'm going to go through and with a glove, because those metal shards can get in your hand, you're going to wipe any excess off. What this is going to do is it's going to leave a very light layer without having it look too goopy. And it's going to give details like this just a bit of a pop. We're not going to add this too heavy because the client didn't want it to be too unnatural looking. If you get the dark wax anywhere that you don't want it to be, all you need to use is a shop cloth and some mineral spirits, and you're going to use that to wipe it right off. So if you accidentally get it on the surface or get it anywhere that you didn't want it to be, just use that mineral spirits. You do need to keep rotating the steel wool around because once you get that wax on it, it's not going to be as effective. And so steel wool comes in rolls, and you just continue unwrapping the roll and then using a clean section of it to wipe off that part that you don't want. After that first coat of poly is completely dry, we are going to go through with a hand sanding and get the surface really smooth. So we're going to knock down any dust particles that were in it, any uneven areas, but we're just going to make this surface completely butter-like smooth. You can use a 220 or 320 grit on this. Then you're going to go through with a tack cloth, which is a super sticky cloth. It has some wax particles on it, but basically wear gloves because it's really sticky. And you're going to make sure your surface is completely clean of debris before you spray your second layer. I'm doing this all in an enclosed space, so if you have the garage door open and you're doing this outside, you're going to have particles in the air that come and land in your surface, including bugs. Bugs love polyurethane. So I do this in an enclosed space. You can see my garage workshop video on my channel, but basically it is enclosed completely in 6mm plastic from the top of my garage down. And so I enclose a small area so that it's completely debris free. I can wet the floors, I can wet the walls down with a spray bottle just so any dust can stick to those to make it an even freer of debris area. Your second layer of poly is applied the exact same way, so whether you brushed it or you're spraying it on, you're using that mixture of the 10% mineral spirits mixed in with your polyurethane to give it a nice, clean, fresh spray. After this was applied, I buffed it down with a 320 after this and did a third layer, and then it was completely smooth. So I have painted the handles in a metallic gold and bronze. I placed it outside. I did have to put this black mat under it because the roller that I was using is the same color, and so when I put it through my AI app, it took the roller that it was sitting on and wasn't able to take that out. So once I made sure all the handles were down, I was able to get some photographs of this and send this to the client and say, your piece will be ready for Christmas. This is also AI, just to show her what it would look like in the home. She got to take this home to her mother. Her mother had not seen it since she pulled it out of storage, and her mother said that she could not even have fathomed how her piece that was covered in cobwebs and dust and in need of a lot of repair could look this beautiful, which just made my whole day, you guys. I love restoring family heirlooms. I love when the family gets to see them and be reunited with their beautiful piece and find the masterpiece within. So thank you guys for following on this journey. It's been a long one. This piece took probably about a month, but I was also working with some newborn puppies that we had. And so you can go over to my Instagram and Facebook and see those cutie pies. But I will be back with another flip very shortly.